Happy Monday, everyone, and we're back.
Welcome. Hello,
Yeah,
hello. We've got a awesome segment today on the Q&As from our Facebook group.
yeah. So every week we've started this new weekly segment where we answer your questions about business growth and private practice growth specifically. And we had way more submissions this week than we're possibly going to get to. So bear with us as we try and go as deep of a dive as we can on a lot of these questions. So to start it off, one of my favorite questions. Let me figure out where I can snag this from. From Megan, what is the very first step from going from a solo to a group practice?
Yeah, so solo to group, I think. Very first step, interesting. I think getting yourself full is important. So if you're cash or insurance, you should be full before you start doing an entire group. Um, One, because that should give you a proof of concept what if your marketing is working, if you're a cash pay therapist. Or two, if you're insurance, it affords you a little bit of money so that way you can go down the credentialing, billing, admin rabbit hole that you'll need to be going down inevitably. So I
Yeah,
think get yourself full, kind of like prove to yourself that you can do the thing. I think is probably the best first step.
yeah. The
Anything?
only other answer that I would have is maybe a second step is to figure out recruiting. So specifically, what is it going to take to recruit your first, second, fifth, your next five therapists? Because that's the big mechanism that's going to take you from solo to a group. Beyond extra clients to send them is can you recruit and figure that bucket out. Rebecca asks kind of on a different note, how can I navigate taxes, insurance for myself, business bank accounts, and more?
Get help. Get help. Get help. It is okay to be weak in areas. It is okay to not know early. Um, I'll tell you, it is faster to just pay for help than it is to try to learn everything. Guys, I mean, my personal story for this is the first time I tried to incorporate a business, it took me a month to figure out. Figure it out, mail in the stuff, do all the things, get it right. And I was trying to DIY it, but literally, there's people online who you can pay them $200 and they'll do it for you in 15 minutes. And so it's just like get help, get out there, look for options, figure out how you can cut down the time tax of ignorance by spending some cash. That's what I
Yeah.
would recommend.
And that Danielle asks, how do I invest strategically into trainings? And I think it kind of comes alongside of that. I think there's two ways to think about investing in trainings. Number one is you can invest in trainings to increase areas that will generate more cash. AKA, I need to hire five therapists. Let's go buy a training that's going to teach me how to recruit my next five therapists, right? And that's going to be really valuable more than another level of EMDR certification or DBT skills, right? One might correlate to cash sooner or differently. And then the other thing is maybe just look at one of your weakest spots on business development or otherwise and invest in that component of yourself or of your business in order to raise the overall standard of how you operate.
Yeah, I might just add a couple other things to that is have they helped other people do the same thing or have they done it
Yeah.
themselves? Um, is a good indicator, or do they have people on staff that have done the thing that you want done? And then I think finally is, are they going to give it to you in the way that you want? Right. So like
Your learning
if
style,
you
yeah.
need, if you excel at receiving a course, setting and forgetting, and you're just the self starter and you're going to go get it after a course, or you really need hand holding, like maybe check to make sure that everything kind of lines up with how you need it and what's going
Yep.
to make you successful.
Yeah, I think those are all great things. On a very, very different note, Ellie asks us, everyone talks about networking. How can I successfully network? Meaning, I want to network with other therapists and doctors and more. Where is even the starting point? So, this is a really helpful question because networking is one of those things that you hear all the time in all these groups and on, Facebook ads and maybe even in your like trainings when you first launch your private practice, like network, network, network. But where do you start with this? So I talk about the 3 by 3 method essentially. Is 3 times a week you do 3 actions. So for about a 30-minute block, if you really want to do this, you split it up into 3 chunks: find, send, follow up. In the first 10 minutes, you're going to find someone that has your people. All that means is other therapists, doctors, providers, counselors, churches, podcasters, social media influence, whatever it is, you're going to choose a category of people to go after. And then you're going to find a person that's relevant to you. You're going to save them, right? Maybe you find a couple people in this time frame. Then next is you're going to craft a message. There's a million ways to reach out to someone. You do snail mail, you could send them something interesting, right, to start a conversation. You could package up a random flip phone with your phone number pre-dialed in and send it to them all mysteriously. Maybe don't do that, but sky's the limit on how you contact them. Most traditionally, you're going to send them a message on social media. You're going to show up in person to a doctor's office. You are going to send a cold email with a crafted message. And, on another live, maybe we can do a deep dive in networking. But long story short, follow a format and be consistent. And then long term, consistently follow up with, in the last segment, people that you have reached out to in the past. This is a strategy that I have been doing for years and successfully works for me and other business owners and other private practice owners to keep you consistent on this action. And you will very quickly learn what types of messages people respond to and don't respond to. So don't get hung up on what I send them. Get hung up on, am I contacting enough people that it actually counts as a measurable amount of consistent networking across a month, 3 months, 12 months, right? Because that's what's going to make you successful at networking.
I might just add one little thing. You asked, I don't know where to get started. Obviously, do the actions that Josh just laid out. But
Yeah.
if you want a good kind of example, it's a national organization for like networking. I'm not suggesting that you have to sign up, but there are networking groups, right? So you can just look up like one that I used to be a part of was BNI, Business Networking International, or something like that. I think you can go to your first one for free. So just show
Right.
up, see their stuff. They'll invite you to other events because they want you to join. But you can kind of just get the gist of what networking kind of looks like. And
Yeah.
so if you need like a place to get started, that's what an in-person networking might look like.
Yeah, and Megan asks where to spend more time for marketing, in person or online. So I think that goes to this question a little bit, whether this is in-person networking or even online networking. But this could also be like online advertising versus in-person advertising. What perspectives do you have on this, Attilio?
I'm a little biased. I really, 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 really like digital. Everything digital is good because to me it's faster. You oftentimes can track all of the activities and all of the data, and it's just as effective or more in a lot of cases when it comes to connecting with people. There's kind of you can use the screen the screen the space between the screens is sometimes big if you perceive it as big, but it's also pretty small sometimes. And so I wouldn't be afraid to dig in too deep. I really like digital. Just about everything I do is digital. I've done a lot of in-person stuff before, and it wasn't my style. But I know that for a fact, in person, you can kind of cultivate relationships a little bit differently. And so I would maybe look at your objective and see
Yeah.
what you're comfortable with, where your strengths lie, and and go with that.
Yeah, depending on what you mean by in person, if you're talking like signage or in person networking or like mailers, I mean, there's a lot of things that could exist in the tangible world.
Like
A lot of
not
those are going to
digital.
be
Yeah.
as expensive or if not more expensive than some of the options that are digitally available to you. I also would prefer digital just because of the reach, right? You can spend $300 on a sign, or you can spend $300 on a Facebook ad, and the one is going to be more trackable and measurable. Not to say people haven't had success with mailers or proper signage or some of those things. There's a reason why all the car dealerships have giant inflatables in front of, you know, everything that goes on. And so there are options, but more often than not, we see most of our practice owners see the most amount of clients come from some form of digital advertisement.
Yeah,
And that's what,
I usually hear I've tried it all, and even if they've tried digital, and then once they get started with like working with a professional, it ends up that digital runs away with it anyway. So uh, just based on the stories that I've heard. So
yeah. Sylvia asks, is what's the best way to start, and is it okay to stay with a specific demographic? AKA, I'm a black therapist, mainly have black clients. You know, where do I go from there with that? So I think a couple things. The best way to start is to get started, as cliche as that sounds. So if you're looking to start your private practice, you only need a couple things. You need an ability to accept clients, like a way to receive payment from clients, and you need a way to for clients to find you. Some states require maybe a certain type of like LLCs sometimes, but often not. And then I'm assuming you already have your license. Those are the things it takes to get started. And so the best way to do that is find a way to accept payment and onboard a client, and then find some way to advertise yourself that would bring a client your way and get the ball rolling. Attilio, what about staying to a very hyper specific demographic, like Sylvie asked about?
yeah, it's your practice. You can do what you want. It's kind of the beautiful thing. If that is a demographic that you can deliver great results for, and you can reach them effectively, and there's a lot of them that exist,
Yeah,
right? Then you probably have a good market that you could probably rest on.
yeah,
For you specifically, we've heard great things about the directory therapy for Black girls.
yep. I was going to bring it up.
Um, and but other than that, 100%, we see demographic specific ads going out all the time from our therapists inside of our program, and they work wonderfully.
Yeah,
I think you just have to kind of check off your boxes. Can you reach them easily? Can you deliver a great service for them? Do they want what you have, and can they pay for what you have? And
yeah,
I, and yours checks all the boxes. So
yeah. So I want to move in the direction of the cash pay conversation, and we've got a couple questions that are going to split out on marketing for cash pay, and some of those things. But to kick it all off, Tanisha asks us, is private pay or insurance better to increase revenue? I love this question.
you can win with both. Honestly, they just have different win conditions. So if you want to increase revenue, if you want to increase raw revenue, you can win with both. To be honest.
Yeah, if you're a solo practice, well, I mean, if you're an insurance practice, I should say, you're capped by what insurance companies pay, which means the way to win is typically increase more volume. Either you as in for individual sessions and or hiring therapists to do more sessions for your group practice. And you just have to complete more sessions at whatever rate insurance will pay you at. There is more control or more upside as a cash pay therapist per a session rate, but it might be harder to find clients. It might be harder to do a sales process. You're going to experience other problems. So there is a way to win at both, and so you have to choose the battles you want to fight, right? One has a heavy admin and billing, function of things. The other one's simpler on that side of things. You just have to choose the battles that you fight. But sometimes, as solo practice owners specifically, and I'm talking just solo practices, it's sometimes easier in the long term to see extra cash come in if you have control of your own rate. I think that question is very different for group practices.
Yeah, I might just add one last little thing because we kind of alluded to it, but ultimately your cash is uncapped. So ultimately your cash is uncapped if you bring in other therapists, for example, that are working alongside you. Um, if you are solo and you plan to remain solo, you have higher control over your rates in the cash pay scenario. And so cash pay makes good sense. If you're just looking at building a great business, they are both wonderful options, but you choose the battles that you want to fight in this scenario.
Yeah.
Decent recap.
Um, Yep. Julie, Carmen, Grace, Mia, Aaron, and like 10 other people this past week asked us about increasing client flow, referral flow, and then specifically like cash pay client generation. So, Attilio, maybe we can spend the next 5-ish minutes and just talk about some of those strategies, whether you're a solo or group practice, that you should be focusing on, maybe the philosophies that you should be focusing on in terms of marketing that's going to make your cash pay practice successful. And I'll dig into a couple of the subset questions as we get into it here.
I'll start with saying this. If your business is under $1 million annually, you can keep things simple and just do 1 to 3 things that work. Okay, 1 to 3 things that work. Usually, the big buckets for these 3 things include directory, like some type of directory strategy, some type of strategy for paid attention,
Yep.
and some type of strategy for organic attention. Organic being you're proving your authority through creating content or maybe some type of networking, even.
Yeah. I think to your point, Attilio, you have to go all in on cracking the code for one, two, and then eventually maybe three forms of client acquisition if you want to be successful. If you spread yourself super thin across 10 different advertising or marketing tactics or whatever, all you have to do is crack the code on one and then maybe diversify long term. And so say, hey, I'm going to figure out how to get clients through my website, or I'm going to figure out how to get clients through networking, or I'm going to figure out how to get clients through paid ads, Facebook ads, or Instagram ads, right? And then take it out, up and out from there. A couple myths in that. You do not have to do social media. I get this question every single day is how important is social media to my cash pay practice? I don't want to be a TikTok therapist. I don't want to be a whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong, Attilio, but out of the hundreds of counselors we directly worked with and then beyond last year inside of our program, I think only one or two of them social media was a significant feeder for their successful cash pay practice.
Yeah, I think it probably we'll make it like 5 or 10, just to be like extra cover our bases.
But
But
still,
yeah, like it's as important as you want it to be.
yeah,
I think the sort of the moral of the story here is pretty much anything can work if you're willing to ask yourself, how can I get this strategy to work? How can I make this strategy more complete? How can I communicate with my audience better? How can I make life simpler for my prospective clients? How can I meet them in the middle? If you're asking yourself the marketing questions, the sales questions to improve the likelihood that someone can work with you, and you just commit to figuring it out, you'll figure it out.
yeah. And we say this all the time as a cash pay therapist and a cash pay group practice, especially volume from your marketing. The quantity of inquiries is the one of the most determinant factors of your success, followed swiftly by your sales process. You and or your team's sales content, sales process, sales conversations, because 9 out of 10 people in the market want to use their insurance when they come to the table initially seeking care, and about 80% of therapists either do not or do not want to accept insurance. So 80% of therapists are going after 10% in the market. So in order for us to be successful at this, we have to generate a high volume of inquiries and then be good at even converting some of those inquiries that wanted to use insurance into working with you and your practice based off of your value and your positioning and a lot of other things. And that happens in the sales process as much or more than it even happens in your marketing. So just know if you're like, man, how do I market my cash pay therapy practice? Know that volume, right? From a single channel or two. And typically paid ads is one of the biggest we see. And then they kind of trickle down from there long term is going to be a huge factor for you to be successful.
We don't have time to go into it like super in depth today, but inside of our paid program, we have 2 models for cash paid therapists. One is proof through action, proving your value through actions, and proving the other model is proving your action, proving your authority, proof through authority. So proof through actions, proof through authority, and essentially you should choose at least one, but you can be both. And so if you're cash pay, how are you proving your value to the marketplace? How are you creating a space where people can find that you are authoritative or that you are a great option for to solve their problem? How does the perceived likelihood of success look from their angle?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of angles to hit, especially with cash pay, where the burden is really on the marketing and sales side of things. Unless you randomly have a really really good reputation or great referral sources, I think that's been the only caveat. Is like someone has great referral sources, or they do a great service for a long period of time, have
Yeah.
astounding values, and build a brand and truly a community, like they're a community linchpin at a certain
Yeah.
point. Those are really the big two ways. So if you don't want to have to wait 10 years to become a community linchpin, I'd figure out how to prove your authority or prove yourself through actions.
Yeah. We talk to group practice after group practice owner that has been in the community for 10, 20 years, and they are just more full than they know what to do with, right? Because they have built a network and a community impact, and there are so many people seeking them specifically. And then this eventually happens for like really great solos. There is no replacement for a phenomenal network and for you spending time developing a phenomenal network. However, it's one of the things that can potentially take the longest, even if it pays the biggest dividends, and you need to get full sooner than a year or 3 years or 10 years it takes to drive that kind of impact on a networking level. Now, two questions as we maybe wrap up today as we still deal with the cash pay conversation. Number one, someone asked, how do I ethically accept cash or charge a rate that makes sense for me and my practice while keeping in mind that not everyone can pay cash, accessibility towards insurance, that type of question. Like let's dig into the ethics of cash pay for 2 seconds here.
I might kind of lead with one. You're I believe that you are experiencing a limiting belief around money. I believe that there is a scarcity that you're feeling, that there's somehow a scarcity of money in the world, specifically coming through your clients. I believe that money's printed every day. It's not even attached to the gold standard anymore. I believe that money's kind of fake and it comes and goes. And people prioritize where they spend, and they don't prioritize where they spend. With that being said, looking through that lens, if we view money as an abundant resource, and it's a stream passing us, and all we have to do is hold out our net and catch them, then you can catch money. You can catch money if you believe that. I also believe that there's enough money, there's enough clients in the world, there's enough resources that exist out there that with the amount of money that you collect, you can put yourself in a space where there is access of that money that you collect, and you can give back to the community in whichever ways that you feel just. I believe that money is a tool, and you can use it exactly how you want to use it. And so, if, for example, you charge the rate that makes sense, that you can live and that you have access on, so charge that rate, find your clients at that rate, and then maybe you have 5 or 10 hours left over where you can contribute to whoever it is that you want. Or you can contribute in different ways, collect money in one way versus another, and then donate the money. So there's a lot of options for you as a person who's ethically conscious. I'm with you. I feel you. There's a lot of ethics in this, but I think maybe changing how we're looking at money is important. If what I said it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then maybe don't change your mind about money. But maybe change your mindset so that we're looking at it abundantly, and then finally recognize that it's a resource that you get to do what you want with.
Yeah. If you look at rates, specifically insurance reimbursement rates for the last 10 or even 20 years, they have marginally improved. So there has been a systemic suppression of rate of how much therapists get paid, and it's still ongoing, and it's probably not going to be fixed anytime soon. So some of the suggestions that Attilio had is perfect, but on a resource driven level, you just physically cannot sustain building a business, being in charge of a full blown private practice and everything that comes with that, while seeing 40 clients a week or maybe even 30 clients a week and some of those things. So you have to be able to charge a rate that is realistic for your business and that gives you margin to give back. Whether that's I have 5 sliding fee slots and when they're full, right? There have to be limitations to your need. And you also have to understand that the industry has not treated private practice owners and therapists very kindly in terms of their worth compared to the amount of education and expertise and value you bring to the industry. And so I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a lot of changes on this, at least hopefully. And it starts with you and your ability to dig into your value, charge what you're worth, and then you distribute your time and your resources accordingly after your appropriate needs are met.
I might add one last little thing. Um, a profound quote for me, maybe it was like a year or 2 years ago that I came across. Um, there's enough poor activists. There's enough poor activists. And that's supposed to be a dig in a lot of ways uh, to get money, essentially. Get money. It's okay to get money because you can be an activist for your causes with money. And money is the tool that you get to use and you get to leverage. And I also think it's kind of interesting because as Josh mentioned, the lowest paid or lowest reimbursed per level of engagement profession is mental health therapists, and that's not going to change unless there's really a push, and really quite honestly a systemic push in the industry for changes of rates. You see
Yeah.
doctors getting paid, I mean, literally three times more, like MDs, and a lot of you guys rival them or beat them, and oftentimes you're doing more intense work with a smaller set, of people. So there's a
Yeah.
lot that you guys are doing. There's a lot that you guys are doing, and it comes internally in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
As a final question on this range of cash pay conversation, how would a group practice that is largely insurance based, this is the question, um, from where'd she go? Ashley. So Ashley is asking insurance-based group practice, but a bunch of cash pay interns because they can't be paneled. How do we market for that? How do we fill into that? I think there'll be some relevant things for anyone that's cash pay or someone else that's an intern or an associate because it's kind of a dichotomy.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So the practice is insurance, is what you said, and
Fully licensed
the
counselors are probably fully insured for the major panels.
Gotcha. I would just lean in on the strengths. Lean in on the strengths for cash pay. Honestly, that's all you really can do. So um, there's immediate openings, likely. So lead with immediate openings. There's likely other opportunities where it's an intern. And so in a lot of ways, you can maybe do some different kinds of offerings. What's kind of interesting about cash is you don't have to do what the insurance companies say. And so you probably get to lean in on like different kinds of offers, like reduced rate sessions, reduced rate first sessions, or maybe even like try before you buy 30-minute free consultation with an intern and like check out get access to the supervisor at this rate kind of situation. You don't have to lean in, or the prospects don't even have to know that you accept insurance. You can totally treat it like cash pay. So you can kind of take that approach, and then I would maybe amplify the fact that uh, you need to get crafty. You didn't have to do too much sales work with an insurance practice, and so it's about time that you pick up the torch and figure out the marketing and sales end of things if you're
Yeah.
going to be filling up pre-license, or don't get more pre-licensed people.
Yeah. So I'd say you're experiencing almost the same problem that someone who's trying to move off of insurance panels or a cash pay therapist who doesn't accept any insurance experiences because they are getting contacted by all these people who want to use insurance. Your only difference is you might have a little bit of availability on some of your fully licensed therapist calendars that do take insurance, but I'm guessing you want to fill these people out. One, because you employed them, but two, maybe the rest of your practice is full. So what Attilio said is maybe, you know, if everyone else is full, it's not an option. So if it's not an option, you shouldn't bring it up as an option in the conversation at all. Specifically, your admin staff needs a totally different set of training to handle calls that will end up placing people for your interns than they do placing people for just your regular team members. So you and your team probably need new training on how to take these calls and distribute these calls. That's definitely something we talk a lot to our group practices about inside of our program in terms of that staff training for our flagship program. And there are other places that you can dig into that information and that problem. But at the end of the day, um, highlighting the benefits of cash pay or doing reduced rate sessions, all of that is going to be your path to success. And if you treat like you're filling them out on regular sessions, you'll never get them full. So just know that there's a different playbook to get them there, and maybe on a longer live, or maybe you can repost this question if you're watching this into the Facebook group, and we can like dig on some deeper points because this can be a pretty complex process. Depending on how many interns you have on your team and your referral load and some of those things. So, not an easy answer, but a really important one for you to potentially figure out.
My secret answer for everyone who made it to the end here is don't get in this situation. If you're okay, like if you're growing your insurance based practice and you have other insurance clinicians, just grow that side of things. Like we always recommend going all in on one strategy because you get some pros by doing both strategies, cash and insurance. You get some pros, but you get all of the downsides of both.
Yeah.
And so if you can choose one versus the other, do that. It sounds like you're in a predicament. So you either have to level up. The place to level up is marketing and sales. And so once you level up in the marketing and sales bucket and you figure that out, I mean, maybe at that point you just move the whole clinic over to cash. But
Yeah. That's true.
yeah,
Well, that's it for us today, guys. We probably had a lot of questions we unfortunately didn't get to. So if you're one of those people, repost them in physical text inside of our Facebook community, and we can answer them in written form. You can do that at any time. So please make that happen. And otherwise, we'll see you next Monday for this. Shoot us a message, post it in the group, and we will get to more questions next week.